So this is a short, simple tutorial to show how to animate a fish in Autodesk Maya. And the fish I've got here is one that I downloaded a couple of years ago, actually, from TurboSquid. It's actually a herring, but there's all kinds of fish you can download here from TurboSquid. But there's also a bunch of free options you can look at as well. So let's start by going to the animation blog. And here's the blog post, which I put up yesterday, Wednesday, the 8th of May. And it's got some suggestions here on where you can find rigs. There's a golden fish rig from Trong, a free shark rig, and a great white as well. Probably the best one to use if you're looking for a free one is the Snook fish rig from Animation Buffet, which you can find here. That's free to download. If you don't want to use any of these, if you want to use the same one that I'm using in this tutorial, just ping me an email and I will send it over to you. Okay, so back to the tutorial. So we've got our fish, and all we're really going to do is animate a curve on the fish's body and then offset the curves. The work method is set out in the blog post. So it's all set out here at the blog. It tells you exactly what to do from the start to finish. So let's start by creating a project and set to it. To do that, you go to Maya and you go File, Project Window, and I've already created one, so I'm not going to do it now, but you go New, and then you name it there, and then you hit Accept. And once you've done that, you go and you set to it. You go File, Set Project, and I've got lots of projects here, but the one I want is the herring project, which I've started there. So herring, and then I set to it, and now I'm in the correct project space. So there's my fish. So what I'm going to start by doing is by selecting. We've got five. If I go to my rotate tool in Maya, I've got 5 rotations on this body, and I'm going to select all of them. So I'm going to, holding down the Shift key, I'm going to Shift select all of these rotations, going down the hierarchy, holding down the Shift key. So now I've got all 5 rotations selected. Actually, even before, I need to go to frame 1 in my timeline. And I also need to set my timeline to 25, because we're going to do a 1 second, one second, come along, 25, come along Maya, there we go. It's going to be a 1 second cycle, 1/1000. So at frame 1, I want a little bit of a bend. I'm just going to bend all of these guys here so that I get a swish in that tail. There we go, like that. And that's going to be at frame 1. So I press S to set a keyframe, and I also want it, because it's going to be a looping cycle, I press S at frame 25 as well. And then at 13, which is the halfway point, I rotate it the other way. So we've got a fishy swim, which is, oh, we seem to have got some X rotation there as well, which I don't particularly want. I also want to go to the animation view, right-click animation. You can find that, by the way, by just going Panels, Layouts, 3 panes, Split Top. There's my perspective view over there. I'm going to need to turn on, under Lighting, I need 2-sided lighting so I can see the rig properly. And here, I'll go in the perspective view there for now as well. And then underneath we have the graph editor, which we want. And if I hit A in the graph editor, I should be able to see all of my curves. So I also want to turn off Select Surface Objects. That's this button up here. We use that for modeling, but when we're animating, we don't want that. And I also, down here, I can see I've actually got I've got a rotation in X there, which I didn't want, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. But now, if I press play, I'm going to get this side-to-side rotation, which doesn't look very good yet, but we're going to offset the curves and make it look nice. So I'll just go back to the blog just to make sure that we're following our steps properly. So here we are back at the blog. So we've done the bend. Now we've done the rotation at frame 13. Now we're going to turn on our infinity curves. So we've got our curves here in the graph editor. So if I select those, and then I go Curves Pre-Infinity Cycle, Curves Post-Infinity Cycle, and then under here, under View, turn on, I'll just tear this off so you can see it, make sure that infinity is turned on. And now I get my infinity curves. And we're going to need this when we offset these keys. And I also want to just flatten off these tangents to make sure that they're nice and flat. And I can go to the flat tangents button there just to make sure that they're all cycling correctly. And once I've done that, I can go ahead and start offsetting the curves. So back to the blog, now start to offset the curves, moving them 2 frames to the right in the graph editor. So we're going to offset each curve by 2 frames, traveling down the hierarchy. So let's go back to Maya and let's do that. So I'm going to deselect the fish, and then that's the first curve, so we're going to leave that one where it is. And this one, that's the second one. So I'm going to take rotate right, select rotate Y, and holding down the shift key with my left thumb and my middle mouse button, I move that 2 frames to the right. So we've just offset that curve by 2 frames. Let's select the next one, and there's my rotate Y, and I'm going to offset this one by 4 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4 frames to the right. Again, I'm holding down the shift key with my left thumb and using my middle mouse button. Let's select the 4th rotation. Select rotate Y there in the graph editor. Drag select that curve. Hold down the shift key with my left thumb. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 frames this time. So each time we're going 2 extra frames. And then finally, this last one, rotate Y, select that and move that 1, 2, oops, I just said that out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 frames to the right. And now, if I press play, I should get a really lovely offset there in the fish's tail, and I do. That's exactly what I was looking for. So the fish is now waving its tail, and we've got that nice offset traveling down the hierarchy. So I'll just press stop, and let's go back to the blog. So now we want to do the same with the head. We want a bit of side-to-side motion on the head. We'll offset that too slightly, and we'll add a bit of side-to-side motion on the main center of gravity control so that we get a bit of side-to-side motion on the fish in the translation. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, let's find the fish's head. That's this control here. So at frame 1, we're going to go and let's curve the fish a bit that way. Press S. Same at 25. And then rotate it the other way at frame 13. And that's a rotation in again, we're going to have to turn on our pre-infinity cycle because we hadn't keyframed this channel before. So let's go to rotate. Let's just make sure that it's an even distribution. You're usually looking for a sine wave with this kind of thing. So an equal distribution across the main, across the origin. Okay, so that's all looking fine. Let's just translate that one. Whoops. Just hit Z. 1, 2 frames to the right. That's what we want. There we go. Something like that. And as we said in the blog, we're going to also select the main body control. That's this one here, the center of gravity, COG, as you can see up there. And we'll move that one slightly to the right. So fish is going to go push itself that way. So let's move it a little bit that way. Press S at 25, S at 1 to set a keyframe, and then 13, let's push it the other way. We're going to have to turn on our infinity curves again. Curves pre-infinity cycle, curves post-infinity cycle. We're in Translate X, so let's have a look at that. Press A in the graph editor. Make sure that we've got an equal distribution curve. There we go, and let's offset that one by 4 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go, something like that. That doesn't look too bad. So now we've got our fish swimming, and it's kind of swimming along. It's not doing anything yet. But let's just go ahead and save our work for now. So I'm going to press stop, and I'm going to go File, Save Scene As, and I'm going to I've got some older versions of this shot. Let me just move that up so you can see what I'm doing here. So I'm going to say that I'm going to call this herring swim underscore today's date, which is the 9th of May 2024. Call this. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now the next thing I want to do is to create some lighting. Now, fortunately, we can do this really, really simply in Maya. I want to make sure that I've got two-sided lighting turning on there so that I can see the textures. I also need to press 6 on my keyboard in order to see those. So let's go ahead and go to Windows, Content Browser, and that's going to open up the Content Browser in Maya. And this gives us all kinds of stuff that we can play around with. But what we're interested in is the Effects tab up here, and Fluids, and Ocean Examples, and Underwater Caustics. That's the one we want. So I'm double clicking on that, and that will create some underwater caustics. And if I look in my perspective view here, I can see I've got a ground plane, and I've got various bits and pieces. And if I go to my outliner, Windows Outliner, I can see those in my outliner. So, and I've got a camera there, which I'm going to want to select. So I'm going to select my underwater camera, and I'm going to go Panels, Look Through Selected. So I'm now looking through the camera, and I can see my fish is very, very big. There's the camera in the viewport over there. So I'm just going to make my fish a bit smaller. Actually, maybe I'll zoom in a little bit closer there, but just take the fish size down to, instead of scale 1, I'm selecting the global control there, or the world control as it's called, and then scale that down to 0.1. And now, in my underwater camera, I'm going to go ahead and do a test render. So I want to go into my render settings, and I want to, in order to do this, I want to light it with Maya software. So I've got that selected. I'm going to do a JPEG, name.hashtag.ext, frame padding set to 4, and then the renderable camera, we want the underwater camera, 640 by 480, no, let's go for HD 720. And close, and then click render and see what we've got. And there we have it. That renders pretty fast, and that looks pretty nice. We've got a fish swimming in the ocean, and we've got our caustics, and it looks good. We've got no set here, but that's for another tutorial. I'll leave you to decide what kind of set you might want, whether you want rocks or seaweed or whatever. But now let's go back to our fish, and let's animate it. So let's take our timeline up to 49. So we'll do 2 seconds of animation. Let's go back to frame 1, and let's select that main global control, and let's move the fish over to the left-hand side of the camera, and let's press S. Very simple animation here. And go to frame 49 and move it over and press S again. So the fish is just going to travel from one side of the screen to another. Oh, but we want that timeline to be, we want that to translate X should be a, just press S. We don't want to slow in and slow out, because generally speaking things travel at a constant rate. So I'm just going to flatten that tangent by making it go linear there. So if I press play now, the fish is just going to swim along at a constant rate. So it's just swimming in a straight line. We could change that a little bit by just making it, you know, adding a keyframe there so it didn't kind of just travel in a completely straight line, but maybe slightly offset it. And then with the camera, I can go ahead and select the camera view. So Windows Outliner, select that camera, and then we can keyframe the camera. We can set a keyframe on the camera here, and then a camera at frame 49, catch up with that herring, so we'll push in on it slightly perhaps. We could turn on the resolution gate here so we know what we're looking at. press S, press A in the graph editor, and then we can also just kind of make that camera move a little bit because it is underwater, so it's bound to wobble around a bit. So just add a couple of keyframes there to add a little wobble, so that we're getting some underwater camera effect. Now if I go ahead and press render now, just to check what we're still working, everything's fine. So the next thing I'm going to need to do, if I want to turn this into a video, is do a render sequence. So in order to do that, I want to check my render settings and make sure that I'm rendering the correct number of frames. So that's 1 to 49. And click close. I think I've got everything right there. And then I go under the rendering menu there. I just go render render sequence. Check the options box there. Yep, it's rendering the correct camera. And then I could go render sequence, and that will render a series of images which I can then turn into a video. So if I click that now, it's going to start chugging through my animation, and I should get a whole render sequence in my images folder in Maya. And one of the advantages of using the software renderer in Maya is it's very, very quick. So this will probably only take me a couple of minutes to render. But in any case, I'm going to press pause now so as not to waste your time. So if I go back to my images folder, you can see here that I've got a whole bunch of herring images, and all I have to do is open those up in any editing software and we'll get a video. Here's one I did the other day. I'm just going to open this up in DVJV, and you can see I've got a actually in this one, there we go. There's a you can see that we've got a herring swimming there underwater. In this version, I've pulled in a couple of rocks just to create a little bit more of a kind of underwater scene. So you can have a lot of fun with this tutorial. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with it. Here's another one with 2 fish in it. Let's open up VLC. That should work fine. There we go. So we got 2 fish running through the ocean there. So have fun with this tutorial. Shows you how to do something simple with the fish and also a simple lighting setup using Maya software.